The evolution of KITT. From Knight Rider's pilot episode through the end of the series, KITT changed. Some of those changes were minor, others, well, you really couldn't miss it. Today I want to give you a general overview of those changes, when they happened, why they happened, season by season. From the front nose to the overhead console, to the lower console, to the fog lights, to KITT's entire dashboard. Here is your guide to the evolution of the Knight Industries 2000. Alright, so we begin with KITT's front nose. Now, throughout the course of the 4 years, the front nose went through a few different versions, and we start with this one. What you're looking at here is a front nose designed by famed car customizer John Ward. Back in 1982, before the show was ever picked up by NBC, Glenn Larson hired John Ward to build this first iteration of KITT. And you can see just in looking at this screenshot what John did. He pretty much took the stock Trans Am front bumper and just modified it. You can see the hood has been extended, right? The stock Trans Am hood would have gone across here. John extended the hood and then modified this stock bumper. Instead of grills right here, he smoothed those out. Instead of indents here where the turn signals would be, he placed acrylic covers on top and modified the center so you could get the scanner in there, the very thin bar scanner that we can see here. Now, this version of KITT was only used for filming for literally one weekend in April of 1982. After they had filmed this weekend of footage, and they filmed it for this pilot presentation that they were putting together. It was about a 30-minute reel that Glenn Larson wanted to put together to take to the NBC to sell the show. So this front nose was only used for the filming of that pilot presentation. Now, because Knight Rider relied so heavily on stock footage, we see this front nose peppered out throughout the rest of the series. But when the show was picked up, the front nose was changed. So let's get into that. Alright, so whenever people think of KITT, this is the look that they think of. What happened was, whenever the show was picked up, Glenn Larson brought in a man named Michael Chaffee to redesign the front nose. Now, Michael Chaffee was a former employee at Mattel, former designer at Mattel, and Larson hired Chaffee for that pilot presentation we just talked about to build the dashboard of KITT. So he did that, they filmed the pilot presentation, the show was picked up, and Glenn wanted the front end of KITT to be redesigned. So he hired Michael Chaffee to then redesign the front end. Chaffee took John Ward's original bumper and he actually sculpted a new bumper on top of that one. So for those of you wondering if that John Ward front end still exists, the answer is no. But you can see here it's radically different from the nose that John worked, the one that he changed. The John Ward's, like I said, was more in line with the stock 1982 Trans Am. This is a complete custom fiberglass piece with openings for fog lights down here, although you really can't see too well in the screenshot. The hood has been cut back to its factory look. The scanner is taller and more recessed, and we still have the acrylic turn signal covers and lots of curves. Really a timeless design. And in the first season of the show, these were actually acrylic covers that hid the factory turn signals behind them. But that look does not stick for the rest of the series. So let's get into the next design. This one that you're seeing here was around for all of season 1 outside of that pilot presentation. So let's move on to season 2. We'll show you what's next. All right, so starting in Season 2, we have a different front nose. And at first glance, you might think this is the exact same one as Season 1, but it's not. During the filming of Season 1, the show, they had a lot of issues with those acrylic covers, flying off, warping, whatever. And it was becoming too much of a hassle. Plus, anytime they needed to make a new bumper for another kit car, they also had to take the extra time to make those acrylic covers. And time is money, so they decided to streamline that process. And instead of having separate acrylic covers, they actually molded them into the fiberglass. And that's what you're looking at here. While at first glance, it does look like this car still has acrylic covers, in reality, what you're looking at are indents where those acrylic covers kind of would have been. Now, we know, because we have a couple of these original bumpers in our collection, that there were two different versions, at least, of this bumper. One, which I believe we're looking at here, it's hard to tell in screenshots. So one has this piece, which is now fiberglass, recessed, sunken down into the fiberglass. Another version has this piece in its location, but it's not sunken down. Instead, there's just a groove cut out around the bumper. Like I said, we have both those versions in our collection. So my guess is whenever Season 2 came around, they took one of their Season 1 noses with the acrylic cover still in place and just made a brand new mold with that and then started casting copies from that. This version of the bumper would stick around for Seasons 2 and Season 3, before it's redesigned in Season 4. Yes, a couple of the cars in Season 4 were never converted to the newer bumper that we're going to show you in a minute, but story-wise, I guess you could say, this bumper was around for the middle 2 seasons of the show. By Season 4, car customizer George Barris was responsible for redesigning the front nose. It was the first redesign of KITT's front nose since Michael Chaffee did his redesign in 1982. So what you're looking at here is a more angular front nose. You can see the curves that Chaffee had in his nose are all but gone, replaced by kind of straighter lines. The turn signal indents are completely gone as well, with the top of the bumper being completely smooth. Now, the bumpers that George Barris built for the show, this style you're looking at here, were all made out of rubber and chicken wire with some aluminum mounting plates behind it. And that was presumably just to make it so, they could bump up against some stuff, it wouldn't crack the fiberglass, things like that. Out of all of the surviving cars to this day, 4 out of the 5 of them have George Barris's rubber front bumper on it. We also have this bumper in the show. So this is, I guess you could say, a prototype bumper, also from George Barris. So before he designed that final version where it was smooth on the top, he had this version which had turn signal indents. So this is kind of a hybrid of the Season 2-3 bumper and the ultimate Season 4 bumper. Only one car was given this specific bumper, and actually this is one of the 2 cars in our personal collection. Now, this bumper is not still on that car. It was replaced midway through Season 4 with Barris's smooth, angular Season 4 bumper that the rest of the cars had. But this bumper was on our car for the first half of Season 4, and you can see it's pretty much identical to what Barris came up with later on, except this one has the turn signal indents, whereas his final version did not. And finally, we'll include this bumper, the Super Pursuit Mode bumper, because it's really unique. It's actually a bumper. It was made from a bumper that was never seen in the show. So what you're looking at here is basically Michael Chaffee's curved bumper from Seasons 2 and 3, but there's no turn signal indents, and the scanner opening is further down in the bumper than it normally would be. So to make this a little bit easier to show you, let me show you a different screenshot. Here's a shot you guys probably have never seen before. This is the transforming Super Pursuit Mode car with its front end retracted. And look how funny that front bumper looks whenever it's retracted. The scanner is further down in the bumper than it should be. It should actually be underneath the hood lip, not as forward as it is here. And of course, you've got the seams and different things like that. But you can really see Michael Chaffee's curves on this bumper, which, again, were not on Barris's bumper that he designed for Season 4. And there's no turn signal indents. So we'll call this another version of the front nose with KITT. So there you go. There are the different versions of the front end of KITT. All right, so while we're talking about the front end of KITT, let's talk about the fog lights and those fog light openings. So in the John Ward front nose, there were no fog light openings, right? Those didn't happen until Michael Chaffee came in the summer of 1982 and redesigned the front nose. So what we're looking at here, this is a screenshot from Deadly Maneuvers, the second episode to air of Knight Rider. And it gives you a really great shot of KITT's configuration at the beginning of Season 1, and really throughout Season 1. Now, of course, there are variations between the different cars used throughout the series. So some cars had fog light grills, some didn't even have fog lights. We're not getting into that minutia for this video. We're just kind of covering, I guess you could say, KITT's main look for each season. So the main look in Season 1 was this bumper with 3 fog lights on either side with the fog light grills, as you can see here. By the beginning of Season 2, that look would be changed slightly. So what you're looking at here is a screenshot from Season 2 premiere Goliath. Now, Goliath was not the first episode filmed for Season 2. It was like the 5th or 6th. But you can see, even at this early point in Season 2, KITT still had 3 fog lights on each side. But if we look at some other screenshots from this same episode, you can also see 2 fog lights on each side lit up. So, and especially in this screenshot, you can see that inner fog light was still there. It just wasn't turned on. So I'm wondering if they had the ability to light up 3 on each side or 2 on each side, or they just disconnected those inner bulbs because they thought it was too much light. But you can see here, beginning in Season 2, they moved towards 2 fog lights on each side with the grills still in place. All right, and then as we continue on through Season 2, you'll notice that a lot of the cars slowly over the course of the season lose their fog light grills. Not all of them. In fact, the fog light grills make their way into Season 3. But gone are the 3 fog lights on each side. So from here on out, we've got 2 fog lights on each side, mostly without grills. All right, so something to note. So this is from Night of the Chameleon Season 3. You see 2 fog lights on each side. And by the way, the fog lights, while there's always 2 on each side during the course of Season 3 and Season 4, you'll notice, depending on the car they're using, sometimes the fog lights are positions toward the center of the car. Sometimes they're on the outside. Sometimes there's more of a space between them. That's all because there was no consistency when they were building these cars for the most part, and they would just place them wherever they would place them. But one thing I wanted to point out, so look at the fog lights here, and then look at the fog lights here. This is Season 4, Night of the Juggernaut, and this is with Barris's new redesigned angular front nose made out of rubber, which we just talked about. The fog lights look bigger to you, don't they, compared to that shot we just showed? Let me see if I can... Yeah, see how they look kind of smaller there? They look bigger here. So what's going on? They are actually the same size fog lights as earlier. But the reason they look bigger is twofold. One, the frames on the fog lights are chrome here. In Season 3... Let's see if I can show you again. In Season 3, they don't show up too well, but the frames are painted black. So just that fact alone makes these look bigger because the chrome blends in more with the glass and the reflector inside of the bulb. And also, with Barris's nose here, these fog light openings are a little bit taller than they were on Season 2 and 3. So those two things combined make the fog lights look a lot bigger, but in reality, they're the same size. And one other variation of fog lights I wanted to mention, specifically on the convertible car. The convertible used a different brand of fog lights than the hardtop cars for no specific reason, but it probably was just all they had at the time. So let's go back to here. Notice how they look kind of rectangular, right? And the glass is kind of rectangular. Well, look here. These fog lights are rounded. The bezels are rounded. The glass is rounded on the sides. So it's not a perfectly rectangular fog light. It's more rounded. And that only appears on the convertible car. So there's a slight variation to the fog lights for you. But still, 2 on each side. No fog light grills. All right, so next up, KITT's lower console. Lower console went through a few variations throughout the series as well. What you're seeing here is the first one designed by Michael Chaffee. There's a kind of a better look there. So this is the console that he designed for that pilot presentation way back in April of 1982. We've got the square red and green illuminated push-button switches, the 4 white rocker switches, the factory Trans Am window switches, and this coating space mat. So this lower console would stay in KITT throughout Season 1 and a little bit into the beginning of Season 2. Here's a great behind-the-scenes photo of this console from midway through Season 1. You can see already how they have tape holding it down, and it's already starting to show quite a bit of wear there. All right, so this was Season 1. So interestingly, this is a screenshot from Season 2, Brother's Keeper. And KITT got a new Season 2 lower console, but it wasn't until a few episodes into Season 2 that we start to see this new lower console. Actually, what you're looking at here is the Hero car, the one that had the full dash and all that stuff. And the Hero car would get some upgrades a few episodes into Season 2, like off-camera upgrades. And that's when they replaced the lower console. But if you look here in Brother's Keeper, which was one of the first episodes filmed for Season 2, we still have that Season 1 lower console here. All right, by Season 2, midway through Season 2, or a few episodes into Season 2, the lower console was changed out. Not only the electronics, but the whole fiberglass assembly was upgraded. Why they went to the effort to sculpt and mold a brand new lower console, the whole thing, when they could have just replaced the electronics, your guess is as good as mine, but they did. They actually took the time to sculpt a whole new lower console. And you can see this one's a little bit different. Instead of the 5 red and 5 green lights, we have 6 orange, green, red, and yellow. We still have the rockers in the middle, the power window switches, and instead of the space mat pad, we now have a bunch of computer keys and a red LED display there. So this is from Mouth of the Snake. This is the best close-up we get of this lower console here whenever Michael's pressing some buttons. But you can see how it evolved and changed a little bit from Season 1. All right, and then when KITT got his redesigned dash in Season 3, he also got a redesigned lower console. And once again, they redesigned not only the electronics in it, but the whole console itself. So here's a look. This is from the Season 4 episode Out of the Woods, but you kind of get a look at that lower console. So whenever we look at it a little closer, we see has 3 distinct sections. We've got this lower section, which is actually an Alpine radio, model 7155, cut down with a cassette deck. We have a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive here, and then we've got this LED array, which these aren't buttons, these are just LEDs that light up. So this console that you see here would appear, and you can see there's the cassette tape coming out. So this is the final console of the series. This lower console appears in all of Season 3 and all of Season 4. So those are your variations of KITT's lower console. All right, next up, KITT's overhead console. Also went through a number of revisions throughout the 4 years the show was on the air. The initial overhead console, which you can see here, was designed, again, by Michael Chaffee. And one of its trademark features is this, how it hangs down so far and has this kind of angled area on the driver's side, a little straighter on the passenger side. Now, one of the best looks we get at this overhead console actually comes from this promo shot. filmed in 1982. Looks, by the looks of it, I'm going to say this was filmed around the time they filmed Inside Out, one of the second episode produced for the series. Anyways, here you can kind of see what's on that display. You see the digit counter, intensity, night scan or night seek, which is really cool, preset scan, infrared, and then some bar graphs here. So that was what was on the front of that overhead console. And when you look at it from the side, there were some toggle switches here as well. So this was definitely a precursor to the button-heavy console that we'll see coming up in Season 2. But this overhead console was only in the Hero car for Season 1. By Season 2, they switched to a different overhead console, which we'll share with you now. All right, so Season 2, the studio decided to redesign the overhead console. 99% sure they redesigned it because the other one was obstructing the view too much. It was bulky, large, hung down a lot. They decided to go with this more form-fitting overhead console, and you can see here how it kind of curves and hugs the headliner of the car. Gone are those toggle switches. Gone are a lot of the LED countdowns. Instead, we've got buttons, and more buttons. Lots of buttons here in the overhead console. Here's a close-up view of it. So these are just computer key caps in the center, and then you have these lighted switches on the side of the console, and another set of 4 on the front. So this redesign of the overhead console, so the fiberglass itself, this is the final design for the fiberglass. We'll see this throughout the rest of the series. But the buttons themselves, the inserts, the buttons and LEDs and all that stuff will change throughout as we continue on throughout the series. So the console you see here in this configuration is only in Season 2. Interestingly, this screenshot is of one of the 2 cars that we own today, and that overhead console is still in the car today, which is really, really cool. Okay, Season 3 and 4, the overhead console, like I said, the fiberglass is the same, but they changed up what is in the fiberglass console. So we still have the row of buttons down the center. Those pretty much did not change, with the exception of the colors here and there. But again, there were a couple versions of this console. Button color was never consistent. That's to be expected. Gone are the set of buttons, the lighted buttons on the side. They replaced them with these LED arrays here, and also replaced them with LEDs in the front. In universe, these are all pressable buttons. In reality, these were just lighted LEDs that did nothing. All right, so here's a better look at those LEDs on the side. This is from Season 4, Hills of Fire. Something interesting to note. So the car you're looking at here is the Season 3 and 4 Hero car, the one that Hasselhoff used the most, that had the full dash and all that stuff. So take a look at this. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these LED arrays here. Well, if you look at the insert car, which is the one that they used, they never filmed the outside of it. The outside of it was actually a stock black and gold Trans Am for Season 4. But the inside was decked out, and this is the one they used for filming interiors most of the time. Look at this. This one only has 8 LEDs on the side. So minor differences. And again, note the button colors. You got some red, yellow, blue, yellow, white, white, white. And you come over here and you got white, yellow, blue, yellow, red, black. I mean, they're not consistent at all. But this is the final design of this overhead console. So you have Chaffee's original Season 1. We've got the Season 2 and then the Season 3 and 4 overhead consoles. All right, so let's talk about the dash for a minute. So what you're looking at here is Michael Chaffee's original Season 1 dashboard that was used for the filming of the pilot presentation, which we talked about when we were talking about the front noses. So Chaffee designed this. He only had a few weeks to do it. He did an amazing, amazing job. A couple things I wanted to point out here, and so I can show you how things evolved. So original design as delivered to the studio by Chaffee. We've got obviously the working CRTs. We've got the steering wheel, smooth steering wheel, Night 2000 written on the steering wheel. Notice the pod buttons. We don't have any turbo boost or oil slicks. We just have these generically listed buttons because Chaffee didn't know what the functions of the car were, right? So he was just put generic buttons in here that would get replaced as the series went along. We also have Chaffee's voice box here, which we'll cover the voice box specifically in a moment. But notice the dash here. This is what's called the dash-on-dash look. Why is it called that? Because this part you're looking at here is the factory Trans Am dash pad. When Chaffee designed his original dash, he actually designed it not as a full dash cover, but just a piece of a dash right here that got screwed on to the factory dash. This is a design feature that would be lost as the car evolved over the seasons, but originally designed, it was this dash-on-dash look. So take a look at this. We're going to fast forward a little bit. This is still the pilot, but Michael Chaffee delivered his original dash. They filmed the pilot presentation. The show was picked up, so now they needed to make molds of all of Chaffee's parts because those were all one-of-one pieces at that point. So the studio took the dash, took the steering wheel, took the front nose, took it all apart from the original car, molded them, and then cast new pieces. They didn't reuse Chaffee's original pieces, we think, because those were all made out of balsa wood and body filler, and I don't think they survived being molded. So the hero car, which we just showed you a minute ago, looks like this right after they finished filming the pilot presentation and they started filming the actual pilot. So you can see right away the steering wheel has a hole in the center for the mount. There's no gull wing emblem. You can see seams in the dash. It just overall looks not as well done because the studio didn't care, right? They just wanted to pump this stuff out and start filming. The reason the steering wheel has the hole in the center, Chaffee's original one had a hole in the center as well, but you didn't see it because Chaffee built a cover to cover that mounting hole. And whenever the steering wheel was molded and recast, they never put the cover back on. So that's why KITT always has a hole in the center of his steering wheel. And see, here's another shot, still of that same dash. They did put an emblem back in there, albeit not 100% correct to what Chaffee had in there, but you can still see the hole in the steering wheel. You can also see none of the buttons have been replaced yet. Test 1, 8 DLA, just very generic buttons there. So for the most part, the dash in season 1 stayed the same. Now we're not going to get into the tiny nuances of differing LED colors or things like that. This is just meant to be a general overview. So for season 1, the dash pretty much stayed the same. And as a quick sidebar, for those of you who don't know, the studio also built a second dash that was called the insert dash. The insert dash sat on a soundstage, was never in a car, and was used for all of the close-ups. It had functionality to allow the technicians off screen to run the tack up or change digits or switch from auto to normal to pursuit. It was the dash that had all of the functionality to it. So there's going to be times in the show where you see the dash in the hero car and then you see the insert dash, you see it's different. For example, the insert dash had this little dimple in the center as opposed to a full hole, a mounting hole. It had the turbo boost buttons. I mean, there were a number of differences between this dash, but we're talking about, for this video, the dash actually in the car. All right, season 2 comes along, and the show filmed, all the seasons, they were filmed out of the order, different order than what they aired. But for season 2, they filmed, I think, 5 or 6 episodes before they filmed Goliath. So they came back a little early for the second season, filmed a few episodes, then took a hiatus, then filmed Goliath. So for those first few episodes that were filmed for season 2 before that hiatus, we can see that KITT still had most of the original dash from season 1. It's still that dash-on-dash look, which you can kind of see here, right? We can still see it has Chaffee's original pilot-style voice box and some other little details. But look at the monitors. The monitors are different. Chaffee's original as-delivered dash had 2 working 5-inch black and white CRTs in there. But that insert dash I mentioned, whenever they built that insert dash, they decided not to go with CRTs. Instead, they built these custom frames and insert these like 3.5-inch rectangular gray blocks or screens. They weren't really screens, they were dummy. And I think the reason they did this is to make it easier to insert video in post-production. Because with the CRTs, the edges are rounded, there's a glare from the screens. Here, they could just have a rectangle that was a muted gray, and it would be real easy for them to insert shots. So when season 2 rolled around, they actually took that design of the monitors from the insert dash in season 1 and put it in the actual hero car. Because see, if we reset all the way back to Inside Out, which was the second episode produced, it was the episode made right after the pilot. So this is the episode that really kind of debuted. I mean, the pilot did have the insert dash in it, but this is the first time we see the monitor screens. And you can see even way back at the beginning of the series, on the insert dash, they had that style of TVs that would eventually make their way into the season 2 car and become the official monitors of season 2. But after they filmed those first few episodes of season 2 and they took that hiatus, they took the opportunity to upgrade KITT's dash. So you can see it got an all new fiberglass shell that is not the dash on dash look. See how it's nice and smooth and it covers the entire top of the dash. And they also took the opportunity to finally upgrade KITT's voice box to the 3-line modulator version as opposed to Chaffee's original square voice box. So really that square voice box that you saw way back in the pilot was in the hero car through the start of season 2. In fact, here it is. This is the hero car whenever they filmed the season 2 episode Ring of Fire, which was one of the first ones filmed for season 2. You can see they still hadn't upgraded yet. So even though KITT only had that square voice box for the first 12 episodes of the show, it was still in the hero car into a few episodes into season 2. All right, and of course for season 3, as we've mentioned, KITT got a completely overhauled interior with a brand new dash. And this is that dash. This dash was not built by Michael Chaffee, but it was designed by Michael Chaffee. So there is some continuity there, and it is a nice evolution of the dash as seen in the beginning of the series. There are nuances and differences in LED color between the dash in the car and the new insert dash, but those are things we're not going to get into for this specific video. This is, like I said, just a general overview of the changes with KITT. So the dash you see here, for the most part, remains unchanged for season 3 and season 4 through the end of the series. All right, so let's quickly talk about the evolution of KITT's voice modulator. As you can see here, this is Michael Chaffee's original designed voice modulator, sort of. Technically, this is the original design. So we only see this in a couple shots in the pilot, but Michael Chaffee's original voice box said Night 2000 on the voice modulator. The voice modulator was a rectangular blinky box, and the LEDs below were rectangle as well. The countdowns on the side were kind of orangish and red, and not as prominent as they would become later. So this, what you're seeing here, is also in the pilot, and at some point someone decided to remove the Night 2000 wording from the voice box itself. So again, this specific voice box was only for that pilot presentation. Whenever the show was picked up and Universal disassembled the dash, molded everything, put it back together, a lot of this detail was lost. We really don't see the square voice modulator too much more in the series. Like I showed you just a minute ago in the episode Ring of Fire, you can see that that original voice box is still in the hero car through the beginning of season 2. But the main voice box that you see in KITT for those first 12 episodes is this one. And this is from the insert dash. This one was never in a car. But you can see the colors are more prominent on the countdown. The normal auto cruise are rounded a little bit more, not so rectangular, and Kit's voice box is rounded on the edges as well. And I always notice this little double hump here. Not sure what that is, but that's always been prominent there in those first few episodes. All right, and then of course, after those first 12 episodes, Kit's new voice modulator premieres in the season 1 episode Hearts of Stone, the new voice modulator, which was definitely inspired by Carr's voice modulator from Trust Doesn't Rust, which aired a few episodes earlier. One thing to note is the pursuit light. So when the pursuit light is off, it almost looks blue, but in reality, when it's on, it's white. And that's going to be a detail that's going to change as we progress throughout the series. Let me show you. So again, in those first few episodes of Season 2, filmed before the hiatus, the pursuit light is still white. But take a look at this. A few episodes into the series, they change it to a red LED. Which, if you think about it, makes more sense, right? Pursuit, fast, fire, I don't know. It just seems red seems to be more of a color for pursuit than white. So I think that was definitely a positive change. And you'll notice that the voice modulator changes as well. Sometimes, and I think it's just a change in the intensity or the sensitivity of the voice modulator in terms of how it reacts to the audio input. But in late Season 2, whenever Kit talks, you see pretty much all 3 of the lines are at full strength. Back in, that we just showed you back in Hearts of Stone here, whenever you see Kit talking, it's not quite as strong on either side. So I think that's just a setting that they were playing with and kind of changing Kit's look as they went along. One other thing to note, the voice modulator, if you count the number of bars, there's 16 of them here. Well, we know that the LED bars that they used in here had 10 LEDs apiece, and there were 2 of them stacked end to end. So they clearly weren't using the outside 4 LEDs. And actually, if you look really close, you can even see one of those LEDs on the end there that's not lit up. So Kit's voice modulator for Season 1 and Season 2 was pretty much limited to those 16 LEDs. In Season 3, when they redid the dash, they decided to utilize all 20 of those bars. So Kit's voice compared to here, you can see it's longer, it's taller, right? And you'll also notice some slight changes to, major changes to the countdowns, the LEDs below, normal cruise, auto cruise, pursuit. And then in Season 4, for the most part, it stayed the same. By the way, these screenshots, these close-ups are all of the insert dash, right? We'll show you a screenshot of the actual voice modulator in the car here in a minute. But the only major change between Season 3 and Season 4 for the dash is this no longer says normal cruise. It only says normal now. And it looks like they dialed back the intensity of Kit's voice as well. It's not as tall, as long as it was in Season 3. But in terms of the voice box in the car, this is not in the car. This is actually the insert dash from an angle. But this is the hero car. And in terms of the dash, the voice box, it's pretty much similar or the same as the insert dash. There wasn't too much variety. You can see it does say normal cruise, auto cruise, and pursuit. It does say normal cruise, not just normal for Season 4. They never made that change in the actual car, just on the insert dash itself. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same, and this really doesn't change at all in Seasons 3 and 4. Alrighty, so there's a somewhat quick overview of the differences in Kit from season to season. Now, I know I did that at a very high level. If you guys want us to do a deep dive into a specific piece in Kit, maybe you want to see a real deep dive into the detailed changes in the overhead console or the lower console from season to season with close-up shots and things like that, we can certainly do that. But this was designed more just to give you an overview of the evolution of Kit in a generalized term. As I said before, these parts varied from car to car, and that wasn't the point of this video. We were just trying to give you the in-universe changes, I guess you could say, for the most part. So, but if you want to see more detailed deep dives on specific parts of kit, let us know in the comments below. All right, that's all we got for today. Hope you enjoyed this, hope it was informative, and hope you share it with your friends. As always, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.